Please call the roll. When you're
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Present.
Mayor Brown,
present.
Councilmember Sweet,
Present.
Councilmember Tucson,
Present.
Councilmember Simmons, Councilmember McLean,
Here.
Councilmember King, with 5 present and 2 absent.
Is there a motion to excuse? I don't know.
So moved. Support.
All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okey doke. Please rise as you're able for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. I will entertain a motion for agenda approval.
So moved. Support.
Any updates, changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're gonna get right to it. We'll have a presentation from Matt Carpenter about the Ypsilanti Transit and your team. And Jesse, well, yeah, we all know and love Jesse Miller. Hi, Jesse.
He looks vaguely familiar.
Good evening. There were lots of names here. I didn't know who was going to be doing the talking. All right.
Oh, and unfortunately, I'm obviously not going to be the one doing a lot of the talking. Well, I'm happy to talk about transit all night, but it's good. It's great to see you all. Jesse Miller, I'm the appointee from the city of Ypsilanti to the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority Board of Directors, and I'm really happy to be inviting staff or accompanying staff and introducing them to talk about the Ypsilanti Transit Center. When I was first appointed in 2018, so nearly 6 years ago, this was a topic of conversation. People were asking me where I thought the YTC should be. And I thought, 3 years, we're going to be breaking ground. And then I found out how things work. And it's been a long time, but a lot has happened in the past year or two to really just completely change the landscape for this project. And it became this is what we would do if we can secure funding we have we have a lot of the funding laid out, thanks to the voters of Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, and Ypsilanti Township, where our most recent millage passed in all 3 jurisdictions. And then thanks to the work of elected officials like Debbie Dingell and Senator Peters. They've been tremendously helpful. This has really gone from kind of a hypothetical to we're actually making plans. We're hiring consultants, and this is what staff is here to talk to you about. So they'll be giving you some background on what was done in 2018.
Bless you.
Some of the work that we can still use, but that was a long time ago, obviously pre-COVID. Some of that we're going to need to be doing some more work, reaching out to the community, making sure that we're still on the right track before moving forward. And yeah, I'm really excited for y'all to hear this. So thanks very much for having us.
Thank you, Jesse, for the introduction. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So my name is Gretchen Johnson. I am the senior project manager at the RIDE and the one leading this project. So I'll give you the presentation and I'll have Forrest and Matt jump in if there's anything that comes up, but hopefully I can answer everything for you. So just to quickly give you an overview of what I'm going to go over tonight with the agenda. First, kind of talk about a little bit of the history of transit in the city of Ypsilanti, and then talk more specifically about the project, the history. I'll give a little overview and then move into the project as it is, as it is today, as it stands. So go over the project schedule and funding, and then we have an effort for public involvement coming up. So go over that a little bit and the next steps, as well as leave time for discussion at the end. So the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority, as we were back then, formed in 1969, pretty soon after that, we started the route-based service that you see today, and that included service into downtown Ypsilanti, primarily on the major corridor of Washtenaw, but other major corridors as well. And so about 20 years after that, we built the current YTC, Ypsilanti Transit Center, on Pearl Street in 1993. I skipped a lot of history in there, but service grew and expanded over time. And then leading into the 2010s, we created the 5-year transportation improvement program. So that involved quite a large service expansion, and that's when the city of Ypsi and Ypsilanti Township were added as member municipalities into the ride. And so that effort has concluded, and of course involved a lot of expansion and service in the city of Ypsilanti, and we saw pretty much right away that the OITC was not really serving the needs of the community nor transit any longer. In 2017, we started an effort to then assess the needs for a transit center in downtown Ypsilanti. That study, sorry, I'm actually just getting over a bad illness, so hopefully my voice isn't, I don't lose my voice, but that completed at the end of 2018. And that brings us into today. I'll go over a little bit of what happened between 2018 and today, but now we are in a new long range plan, the RIDE 2045, which is again hoping for a growth and expansion of service. And then as well as the transit millage in 2022 was approved, which is the first, essentially approved the first 5 years of that service expansion. And so we are expanding service this summer. The millage goes into effect later this summer. And so that's when we'll implement that service expansion. And the transit millage also included a little bit for capital projects. So just to go over the project a little bit, this is just a quick map of the service area for both the fixed route and the more point-to-point demand response, showing the Ypsilanti Transit Center and our only other major facility, the Blake Transit Center, apart from our headquarters and garage, of course. Great. So the center has reached the end of its useful life. Now that doesn't mean it's about to be condemned or anything like that. It is 30 years old, and that's sort of the traditional length of federally funded infrastructure project. So it's in very good condition. It's maintained well, but what we've heard from 2018 through to today is that it is too small. It is not working well for any user, whether it be drivers, passengers, our call information specialists. It's really just very space constrained. And so it was included in our long range plan as one of the top capital projects because of those reasons, where it's really due to be replaced anyways, but also no longer serving the needs of the community. So really we started out with a very kind of, basic framing for the project. We need a new transit center in the city of Ypsilanti, and there's needs to be in downtown. The long range plan, our 5-year TIP, all concentrates the service in the city, but starting, from that downtown area. So we know that we need to have it in the downtown. We need a larger center that will accommodate growth. That long range plan has even more growth past this first 5 years that we are implementing soon. And then sort of the other kind of big points that rose to the top in talking with everyone about what the vision for this is that it just needs to be a lot more functional for everyone and more modern. incorporating a lot of the more modern technologies and materials and things like that that you see in some other transit centers around the country. So the map there, it's a little bit small, I know, but that's the current facility. And of course, the study will consider what we do with that current facility. It sits at 220 Pearl Street, corner of Adams and Pearl. And then our service comes pretty much, most of it will come in on Washington and head west on Pearl, that one-way street with the 6 bays along Pearl Street. And the last kind of point that we really wanted to emphasize was that our goal is to build the transit center. So a very critical part of that is maintaining an affordable project. We need to have this done. It's, as I said, one of the top priorities. And so I know I'm sure everyone's familiar with the construction costs and inflation, things like that that's happened over the past few years. We're really focused on keeping this project feasible, and so that we can actually, get something constructed and implemented. Just to give a little bit more history on the background on the 2017 to 2018 needs assessment. We did a really robust public engagement process at that time. It looked at the space that was needed for the new center, as well as looked at various sites. It started with 19 sites within 1.5 miles of downtown and whittled it down to 3 that ultimately were evaluated really in depth. And so the final recommendation from that study was to try to work with the parcels that we own today. So that's the blue rectangles that you see on the map. I'm not quite sure how this happened in the late 80s to 90s, but we own the southwest and southeast corner of this block. And so utilizing those 2 parcels, and then the parking lot to the east and northeast is owned by the city of Ypsilanti. It is a managed parking lot. And so trying to work with the city to utilize this site for the expanded transit center. Work after that kind of slowed down. We needed to ensure funding. That's a critical piece to work with the federal government. And then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, we needed to focus on that emergency for quite a while. So work did slow from that, but we are taking this back up, started in 2023 again. Sorry, actually, could you go back a slide quickly? So if you see on the block, there's, north of all the parcels, there's some residences and a church that we aren't proposing to be part of this project. The parcels that are sort of sandwiched in between the green and the blue there, yep, those are some commercial sites that have been there for quite a while, at least since the 70s. And then on the west side, sandwiched there, is the Harmony Collective, the Hare Krishna movement. That is a historical residence. And so the recommendation from 2018 was to work with the city to figure out if we can make it work on the existing parcels, the green and blue. But then, of course, if there is space constraints, look to some of those as other potential areas, although they are historic, or the house is historic, and possibly the commercial. And so, since that time, learning of that, some of the concepts you'll see on the next slide really aren't going to be the concepts, because we've learned from the city and from talking with FTA and our consultants that we need to really consider those before trying to utilize that part of the site. So these are the concepts that resulted from that 2018 work. The space program from 2018 had 13 new bays. And that included 2 4 longer buses. We have the buses you see mostly out on the road are 40-foot, but we're hoping to utilize 60-foot buses for the high capacity transit along Washtenaw someday. It included that as well as some other modes such as a flex ride or ride sharing, things like that. And then as well as about 3 times as large transit center. So all of that is being reviewed, and I can go over that in a second. So these concepts really aren't what we're moving forward with, but this is what we had back in 2018. You'll see that what I talked about with those commercial and residential parcels there, that is really not gonna work. But again, this was just a concept, very high level concept to essentially see if the site would accommodate the space that we need for the new center. So the project today, we hired consultants to work with us for this next phase. Consultants are DLZ and HDR, and we began that in October of last year. First step was really doing a kickoff internally with our staff, trying to look at what's changed, what's working well on the site today, what isn't. And so we're working to update and validate that 2018 work first, which includes revising the concepts, developing additional concepts, as well as working with our consultants and the Federal Transit Administration to conduct the environmental documentation, the NEPA process. The schedule that we have for the project, throughout this year, we're working on what we're calling phase 2. So considering sort of everything that we did back in 2017, 2018 as phase 1. So working through this year on the environmental part, the additional concept development, initial schematic design is towards the end. So that would be sort of the initial 30 to 50% review of design. And then for next year and into 2026, completing phase 3 and starting phase 4, which is taking that design to the next step, the design development phase, something like maybe 60 to 70%, and then that final design of 90 to 100% complete. In 2026 and 2027, then doing the construction documentation, bidding and permitting, and hoping to open the center in 2027. This is sort of an ideal timeline. Nothing so far has indicated that we can't make it, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. So very much an ideal timeline. Something that I didn't include here because it's so up in the air is at some point, we will need to come to you all and talk about land acquisition, what that looks like, whether that's long-term lease, purchasing the land, or there's lots of different ways to work it, but somewhere in here, we will need to have those conversations. And the funding, so the 2022 millage did include some money for capital projects. So that is one thing that we are very thankful to the voters that we were able to pass. And then as well, we received some congressionally directed spending on the project. So back in January of 2023, we received $7 million from Representative Dingell's office specifically for construction. And a little bit before that, we received $300,000 for the planning from Senator Gary Peters. So that's sort of what Jesse referenced in the beginning, where that really pushed the project towards something that's going to happen. We needed to have a little bit of that funding piece in place to really kick this off and start the process with the Federal Transit Administration. So other sources of funding will be our capital reserves. We are planning to go out for other competitive grants and hoping that we can fund it primarily through that. But should we need to dip into that capital reserves, we're fortunate enough because of some wonderful planning from staff to have that capital reserve. And again, just trying to do a lot of competitive grant process. As of right now, we are not asking for any commitment from the city of Ypsilanti for funding this all through our own channels. So one of the next biggest steps for us in the project is the public engagement. I know you can't really read that. That's a page from our stakeholder and public engagement plan. We looked at a demographic analysis to help us understand the community. But then also through that internal kickoff, helped us understand the community. And so we're looking towards an initial round of public engagement in late April of this year and being open for about 3 to 4 weeks into May. We really want to build on that 2018 work. There was a very robust process of public engagement back then. And so bringing those people back into the fold, if they're still interested in around, but then also reaching out to other stakeholders as well, and doing various methods of engagement for the project, such as a virtual meeting, pop-up event at the YTC, and looking at a few other options as well. Part of the project also includes a technical working group, which is working with the city of Ypsilanti staff as well as internal experts to really advise the project. We meet with them every month. And then also we will form a project advisory committee, which will meet at least a couple times during those rounds of engagement. And those would include a broader spectrum of the community for the project. So next steps, look at those alternative concepts, develop the schematics, continue that environmental review. That's going to be most of this summer, what I'm spending pretty much all my time on. And then the next round of public engagement for later this year, planning right now for the fall of 2024 around September. And then hopefully to move quickly into the next phases, those phase 3 and 4 in the fall and winter of 2024 into 2025. So that's all I have. But I welcome questions.
Thank you so much. So I guess I'll kick it off with the first question. When you were talking about public engagement, I was perusing the tiny print here, and I saw that the community analysis on this page said it was only 1 square mile, like the Eastern Michigan University radius. And I'm wondering if this is just because you put a snapshot in here and there's more of the community that was involved or is going to be involved in the future public engagement.
Yes, that was really to kind of get an idea of the community just, around the current site, but the public engagement will include well beyond that radius, yes. Mm-hmm.
Are there questions from council? Well, Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm just curious about, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious about the other sites that were, you said there were like 3 sites that had been narrowed down to, and where were those other sites? They were all within a mile of this place.
They were within 1.5 miles, I think. Yep. I actually do have a map. I'm not sure if it made it into the presentation here. So it was, I have a map of actually, so we first whittled it from 19 to 9 and then to 3. So I have a map of those 9. I can share that with you afterwards. I can show it to you now if you prefer,
okay,
but it's a
no,
little
just
bit
interested
small.
in
And
3.
it includes like the Water Street site, Spring Street, a couple sites on Cross Street, but then then the existing site. And so that's where the existing site really came to the top, and that's something that we will be reviewing today. But everything so far that we've heard, really, that's a great spot for us. And so nothing's really popped up that's, said that recommendation should change. But it is something that we are reviewing.
Councilmember Simmons?
Hello, thank you. So just a couple of quick questions. One, I know you said that the land acquisition question is, or conversation is later, but just, was that for like all the full part that is the city, where it's like all of the green, like that whole piece is what you're talking about for the land acquisition?
Right, assuming that the site, the current site is confirmed through our public engagement and environmental process. We anticipate it to be that whole
Mhm.
area of green. Yep.
And then I'm sure this is also probably like really early on, since there's a lot of design pieces. But one thing I did notice, that one of the parts that the AAATA already owns is where the big bike rack is.
Mhm.
And I was
Right.
like, yeah,
Right.
I use it all the time.
Oh, nice.
But then I was just wondering, I know on some of the schematics it has different bike things, but I was just wondering whether it would still maintain public bike access, or if it would be, more just for people who are commuting directly.
Right. Excellent question. Yeah, no, we're hoping that it is, essentially multimodal, and that includes bikes for sure.
Mhm.
The pedestrian side, of course, since every transit rider is a pedestrian, but we are thinking about other modes of transit, but then also biking.
Councilmember McLean?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Johnson, appreciate your presentation.
Yeah.
You lost me a little bit when you talked about the currently privately held lots. Whether you think you will need those, you won't need those, it's too early to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we with those?
Too early to tell. So that'll come out through the process, the project, working with our consultants and the FTA. It's too early to tell. We are, as I mentioned, they are, the one on the west side is historic. We are in the process of evaluating the ones on the east side. And so really that will come through the next phases of concepts, developing those concepts and talking with the FTA. And then also working with the Historic Commission and city staff on how if we need to incorporate those, and how we do that.
Madam Mayor, Ms. Johnson, in all of the schematics you've shown, I realize they're early stage potential concepts, but they all include at least some significant parking lot area.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how you're going to gauge the needs of what is now a surface parking lot and will continue to be? It sounds like a surface parking lot. How do you gauge the needs?
Mhm.
And will there be care and attention paid to how impervious the surface might be when that's built?
Sure. So how we're gauging those needs, we're working with the city of Ypsi, the staff directly on understanding from a parking perspective what might be needed. And then also, we've of course reviewed the kind of background documents of, there was some data collected on that from that parking lot. I think it was 2019 the study came out. So looking at all of those documents, incorporating that. And then really the number of parking spaces and the needs will come through those alternative or additional concept development process that we are doing to really help us understand what's going to be feasible, what the community will need and want. In terms of the surface and the imperviousness, that will also come through the design process. So we really haven't gotten to the stage where we talk about sustainability and those factors. But it is something that we've already done some research on and are considering and looking at for the project. But we just really aren't at that stage yet to incorporate those ideas into the project.
Madam Mayor, Ms. Johnson, just early stage thought, comment for whatever it might be worth, be not very much, but hope that you'll not only meet the standard with that parking, but exceed it in terms of runoff.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Further questions from council? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
very
for
much.
having me.
Looking forward to the public engagement pieces.
Yes, please let everyone know. We want as much feedback as we can get.
Thank you so
So
much.
make that known. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Okie dokie. We are not now, I know words. We are now at our first opportunity for public comment. Individuals will have 3 minutes to address council. I will start with those signed up on the list. Then I'll ask who in the audience who may not have signed up, and then thank you so much. And then we'll move to those with us on Zoom. When I call your name or acknowledge your hand, please come up to the podium. State your name and address for the record, please. Cornelius, good evening.
Cornelius Williams. Good evening, guys. So a colleague and myself are working on a project and have been speaking with the prosecutor's office regarding drug checking in Washtenaw County. If you're not familiar, drug checking involves establishing whether there's adulterants in a sample, specifically fentanyl. So you might have heard like fentanyl test strips or xylazine test strips, but these are confirmatory mechanisms of drug checking that kind of will tell you through a process whether or not a given sample has fentanyl or xylazine in it. Of course, everyone's aware of the current overdose crisis. I've spoken a couple times here about, how that disproportionately affects the BIPOC community, specifically in Michigan. Black males are dying at a substantially higher rate from overdose than any other demographic. So there's another type of drug checking that is not confirmatory, rather it's quantitative. So it won't give you just a yes or no. There is an adulterant in the substance that'll tell you exactly how much of it. So through quantitative drug checking, this particular method uses infrared. It would let anyone who brought a sample in know if there is a toxic dose of fentanyl or xylazine in the sample that they're bringing. So this has been really effective in curbing overdose and provides an opportunity also through syringe service and syringe access programs where a lot of these drug checking centers or programs are hosted to give people an opportunity to talk to someone about seeking treatment, to talk to someone about overdose fatality prevention. It's really all good. So through these conversations with the prosecutor's office, we have gotten a letter of intent from him not to prosecute trace amounts of any substance when it's being used for the purpose of drug checking in Washtenaw County. So because of the disproportionate effect in BIPOC communities, our goal is to start a drug checking program in Ypsilanti rather than another municipality in Washtenaw County. This is, of course, going to require some level of cooperation from law enforcement, even though there is a commitment not to prosecute. We're also going to need a commitment from law enforcement not to further criminalize individuals who are utilizing drug checking services. We are going to be presenting for the DA's policy team regarding language for this specifically. I would love an opportunity to also present to council at some point next month where I can kind of provide you guys with some more data and more specifics on what our plans are relative to this drug checking program in Ypsi. So yeah, hopefully we can set that up. Thank you.
Kat? Good evening. And thank you for your email. I got it.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Mayor and Council. I'm Kat Layton. I'm a Ward 3 resident and also recently appointed Commissioner for Human Relations Commission. And so I'm coming to speak, want to just uplift what Corn just spoke about with harm reduction and drug checking. It saves lives. I know there was an issue with needles being plagued in the porta potties. And so having, needle disposal boxes, safe needle disposal boxes would be a really good aid to that. I personally installed one in Bridge Community Cafe. I'm not sure if that's still in access or use, but I know that there's also one at 734 Brewery, I'm pretty sure. So just saying that as like a cautionary thing, it could be on the side of the wall, on the outside of City Hall, or even on the indoors of the lobby. But maybe even not. Maybe put it somewhere that's other places that people feel maybe safe to go actually dispose needles of. But I also just wanted to put on record the formal complaint process for people who do experience discrimination in the city of Ypsilanti. I know there's been a little bit of confusion of what the actual process is. And so I wanted to put it on record that for people who feel they have been discriminated against in the city, they need to provide the city attorney, Mr. John Barr here, a verified written complaint that states the details, names, and addresses of the people or entity alleged to have committed the discriminatory or unfair practice. There's more information about the actual process available in the ordinance and the charter. I just wanted to put that out since there's nothing on the website as of right now for folks to know how to file a formal complaint. Secondly, I also wanted to ask council or put on council's radar. I know that Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, when they approved the millage language, they didn't really provide a lot of oversight of how cities were needed to spend their money. And I know that Public Safety Fund 205 has received quite a bit of money from the millage, 392,000 in 2020, 397,000 in 2021. 438 in 2022, and 2023 was 435,000. But in that same budget year of 2023, 220,000 of that money that's meant for public safety, meant for mental health and public safety, crisis services, crisis stabilization, things that our community is being plagued with right now in housing. We are having a housing crisis. 220,000 of that went to police field services in the general fund, which some of that was spent on gun allowance, and other salaries. So I just would really like council to keep into consideration the purpose of those funds and maybe having a shelter access or a daytime warming center be more operational, since that is a lot of money going towards the city rather than spending that on permanent wages or salaries or vehicles, being able to put that towards the people of Ypsi. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on. Look. Here. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Oh, good evening.
Hello, my name is Gianna Powers, also referred as G within the community. I live in Ypsilanti. Having to be homeless a year ago, I can gratefully state I'm housed and have found work through Fed Up Ministry. I assist with the wash up program on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Freight House. The program provides free showers for those who need that service. Recently, I had the experience of being a peer support navigator for Circling Back. Circling Back is a grassroots nonprofit fiscally sponsored by Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice, dedicated to providing peer-led, peer-focused services to people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. With that being said, in my life experiences of once being homeless, I eagerly find myself applying for Human Relations Commission to continue my work within Ypsilanti within the next few days. I hope to deepen my work and make a change for the greater good of Ypsilanti. And I wanted to alert Mayor and City Council of my upcoming application in hopes that you appoint into that commission. I want to offer my lived experience to the commission, as I feel that I would bring a valuable perspective to the commission with purpose, is to work in favor of all of Ypsi residents. I also just want to use the last minute to mention with the transit here in Ypsilanti, I think it'd also be great to have like access to bathrooms, possibly a space for people to charge their phones. Yes, you can call it hangout or lingering, but to really use that space to use the Wi-Fi, charge the phone, because when you are homeless and when daytime and warming center isn't available, we really have nowhere else to go. So that'd be great. Thank you so much.
So much. And please make sure you attend the input sessions that they're going to be hosting too, to bring some of that up. It's really important. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? All right, anybody on Zoom?
If anyone attending on Zoom would like to make comment, please raise your hand now. Vita Turner Shireen is allowing you to speak now.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Rita Turner Sheeran. I live in Ann Arbor, and I come to you tonight as a member of the We Rock Voter Action and Access Team. And I believe each of you have received an email or a letter from our team asking that you reconsider the decision that you made about early voting regarding the upcoming May election. While our team has been working on voting rights, and certainly we worked hard for Proposal 22.2 that brought us early voting, we wanted to, and we do recognize that the municipalities do not have to allow or provide early voting, but we wanted to just bring to mind that in making a decision at the meeting the last council meeting, that you are making a policy decision, and our concern is, does this mean that you will have no early voting for any of your elections going forward? And if not, what will be the criteria for determining when you will or will not apply standards for early voting? And we would like to ask if the council would be able to speak to demonstrating fair application of a policy where you apply early voting at the May election or any future elections. So we appreciate any feedback that you could give our group at some time in the future, but we believe this is a precedent that you're setting, and worry about the long-term impact of that as you move forward with the new laws. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else on Zoom?
If anyone else on Zoom would like to make comment, please raise your hand now. No hands raised, council.
Saw your hand, Mr. Foley. Good evening.
Good evening, Brian Foley, 425 Ainsworth Circle, right here. Good evening, council, staff, residents. I just want to take the opportunity to come out and encourage our council and our staff to work cohesively together, and don't allow divisive voices and identity politics divide you from doing what we elected you to do, or in some cases selected you to do, and that's represent the city of Ypsilanti's best interests. So I just come on here and encourage you to do those things. Want to encourage the mayor, city manager Andrew, Chief Moore, as well as our DPW director, and just commend them on the good work that they've been doing in the city. I'm out here on the streets all the time, not some of the time, so I get to see the good things that the city is doing and they're attempting to doing. And I just want to encourage you, Chief, to keep on doing what we hired you to do. I see your officers out there. We interact with each other, sometimes daily, sometimes maybe not a week at a time. But I see them out there doing what you hired them and what the city pays them to do. And that's to protect and serve this community in the best thing. I know there's a lot of persons who don't like police, and I see and I can understand their perspective at times. But this isn't the time to be attacking our city and our elected officials in any fashion, in particular, our chief of police and those officers. I see them out there. As I said, I'm out there all the time. And as things are projected right now, This is going to be a very rough summer that's going on out there. So we need all hands on deck. I want to encourage you. Same way with you, Monty, the DPW director. I see your guys out there working diligently hard. So I just want to take this time as being a citizen, just to commend the city for trying to do what the people elected you to do and hired you to do. And that is to serve and protect and take care of the residents of the city of Ypsilanti. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, and happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we will close audience participation. And we will move into our consent agenda, which Councilman McLean, you have that.
Madam Mayor, Resolution 2024-038. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, the following items be approved. Number one, Resolution number 2024-039, approving the minutes of the March 5th, 2024 City Council meetings. And number two, Resolution number 2024-040, authorizing the tying of teal ribbons on certain locations to bring awareness to Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I so move.
Been moved and supported. Please call the roll.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Well, there's some,
There's no, so there's not supposed to be discussion on the consent agenda. We would have to have removed it from the agenda for it to be discussed.
okay, well, there's some edits to the minutes. There's some wrong things, so I guess I'll say no.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King, Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, you have our first resolution?
Resolution number 2024-041, resolution to approve the sale of pedestrian easement at 130 North Huron Street. It is resolved by the council. It is resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that whereas the city acquired a pedestrian easement over the private property of 130 North Huron in 1984 for access to Riverside Park, and the easement was never developed. And whereas the city acquired title to land to access Riverside Park from North Huron Street adjacent to the Riverside Arts Center, including a plaza and steps and a walkway to Riverside Park, and no longer has need of the 130 North Huron easement. And whereas William Douglas Winters, the present owner of 130 North Huron, has offered to purchase the easement back from the city for the sum of $15,000, a value established by the city assessor. Now, therefore, Ypsilanti City Council accepts the offer to purchase the easement and approves and authorizes the mayor and the deputy city clerk to sign and deliver a quitclaim deed approved as to form by the city attorney, terminating the easement and returning the rights of the property owner upon payment to the city of $15,000. And I so move.
Support.
Supported. Good evening, Mr. Barr.
Evening, council. This comes to you for my request, and it has to do with an easement that was given to the city when the city sold this property that is on Huron Street and goes down to the park. At that time, we did not have the Riverside Arts Center Plaza and the walkway down to the park. So talking to the city manager and looking at it, we decided the easement is no longer necessary. And what happened is Attorney Winters put a fence up over the easement, which causes a problem. So it came to us and we discussed it, and he's offered to buy the easement, which I recommend.
Mr. Barr, how was the price determined for how?
I contacted the city assessor and asked her for a figure, and that's what she gave me.
Thank you. Other questions from council? Councilmember Simmons.
Hello. So I have a few different questions about this. One, I'm just wondering, so it's my understanding that when a fence goes up, there's a permitting process. So I'm wondering how this was passed through the permitting process with the fact that it goes into our easement. And I also know from when my neighbor wanted to put up a fence that came across our property line, we actually had to get a a letter, I had to take it to a notary to say that it was okay for her to put up the fence. So I'm wondering how they even put up the fence in the first place. So that's one question.
That's part of my recommendation. What happens is this easement was created on a warranty deed that was filed with the county. And my impression is that the different departments didn't realize that we had that easement because it had never been used. We have a relatively new staff, limited staff. And when a question like this comes up, it goes to the Historic District Commission. And they said, yes, this would be an appropriate use for the area. And then it went to the building department, and I think they said, yes, the fence meets all the requirements. And I don't know for sure, but I believe that they just didn't know that it was going over the easement. And that's part of my recommendation, since we don't need the easement. If we want to enforce it, I'd have to go to court, ask him to tear the fence down and so on. And since we don't need the easement, I'm recommending that we sell it.
So the other thing is, when you say we don't need it, so I will say, so, because I know where that is, that's an area, you know, that oftentimes I'm like, oh, I want to go up that way. It actually feels like you kind of want to cut through there. And I generally haven't, because I was like, oh, I don't know that I can. But then other people do use that, especially because it's right across from where Washtenaw comes into that area. So it's actually pretty direct in some ways, and it goes more directly to the park, actually, than where the Riverside Art Center space is. And I also know it's used because actually, and I'll just say this as a public apology, actually, to a resident, Bill Teepin, who had actually emailed myself and the police chief back on September 8th of 2023, because he had actually gotten a trespass warning for being in that area. And he had reached out saying, he had actually reached out even earlier when they started being, before it was an official fence, and there was something saying about video surveillance in the area. And there was this different, you know, it was a plastic fencing that was put there. And, you know, originally he was talking about this connection to the church that was there, but now kind of knowing this, I'm like, oh, this is because that was that space. And so I just want to say that, one, you know, again, he probably shouldn't have gotten that because he was in the public space. And just a name that actually was being used. So I just want to say that because this is something that came forward. I didn't know at that point, obviously. So that's why I want to put forth the apology, but also to say that I think that people were using that space. And I think that that was the reason why they then put up the fence. So when we say it's not being used, I think we just should be clear. And actually, when we think about public access to the public park, we probably should just make it more clear that people could use that space, as opposed to getting rid of access, because who knows what might happen with Riverside Art Center at any time too, in that space, which sometimes goes into disrepair. Sometimes with the stairs, it's actually not as accessible for people who might be rolling, or different things like that. In the wintertime, it's kind of actually hard to use that space because it's not upkept, right? It's not maintained. And so actually a direct path to the park would actually be much more usable for the general population. So I want to put those things forward as a person that kind of is in that space, walks in that area. So in usage, and I can say that I actually would use it and kind of have, you know, taken the longer way, but now know that people have used it probably for that reason. So yeah.
Further questions?
I just have one quick question. I'm wondering, why did we not receive this at our last meeting, just because it is dated March 4th?
I believe because of the length of the last meeting. That's a process question. I can't tell you exactly, but I assume that's why it was.
Yes, correct. When I received this item, the agenda had already been set and it was a very lengthy meeting, so the fence was already there, so that's why I put it on this agenda.
If I might, Your Honor, just two other things. In addition to the easement in the deed, there was also a historical preservation easement in the deed, which required the owner to keep the property in the present architecturally proper condition. So that's been done. And talking to Mr. Winters, he said one of the reasons he put the fence up was because he was getting vandalism and the house was broken into. So he did put up cameras, and then the fence was part of that, protecting the property.
Further questions from council about this?
The only other thing I was
Councilmember
gonna
King?
say is I also heard feedback from some residents stating that they do use this area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. All right, further comments or discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm sorry.
You
So
need
this,
Mr. Barr again?
yeah, when did he purchase this property?
Well, back in the 80s, the property came to the city. Before that time, I'm not sure exactly when. And the property was in very bad condition. And the city got the property, and there was a Tiffany window in the front of the property. There's a special window in the front. And the city got the property and they removed that Tiffany window and they gave it, or they moved it to the Ypsilanti Historical Museum for safekeeping. And they put it in an exhibit and backlighted and so on. So at that time, the Huron Street was entirely different, and it was in bad condition. And beside the rec center, there was a car wash, a one-story concrete block car wash that was in disrepair, and there was a rumor that it was being used for drugs and so on. The Huron Street was not in good condition. So the city had this property. They decided they didn't need it. And there was a gentleman by the name of William Durant, I think it was, that came in and bought the property and lovingly restored it to its original condition, did all the woodwork and tuck pointing, and brought the property up. After William Durant, there were several other owners, and Mr. Winters, someplace in the mix after the historic district was created, purchased the property. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date, but he also has been keeping the property up in good condition for the historical character of it.
So he would have known about the easement from the transaction when he.
Well,
purchased it.
he's an attorney, and I would assume that he would know, looking at the deed, that he had an easement there. I can't say that for sure. I'm an attorney, and I have to say, I have a perfect memory, but sometimes it's short. And it's possible that Mr. Winters, I don't know. I can't
Alright.
tell you.
I was just trying to get at Councilman
Mhm.
Simmons' question about, it was like, how did the fence go up without
Well, I can,
anybody here noticing
I
it,
can
without
tell
him knowing it?
I can tell you that there was a problem as to where the easement was. Because it's defined in the deed as 8 foot, and there's a legal description, but going out to the property, you wouldn't know. Some people thought it was on the line with the church, which is not exactly true because it kind of zigzags into the property. And it could be that he knew, just thought it was on the line, that would be reasonable. So I don't know the answer to your question, sir.
Thank you. Further questions for Mr. Barr? Thank you for real this time. Further discussion with council on this purchase or sale? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
No.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yeah.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries with 5 yes, 2 no.
You, Councilmember Simmons, you have our next resolution?
Whereas the existing streetlights in the first block of North Washington have been in need of repair replacement for some time. Whereas the DDA has indicated a willingness to absorb the initial capital cost of the improvement. Whereas DTE has suitable stock fixtures for the location and provided a quote acceptable to the DDA and the city. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Ypsilanti approves the proposal from DTE for $59,004.32 be paid from 101-7-4480-775-01. And further, that staff is directed to invoice the DDA for the capital cost of $66,041.60 into 101-4-4480-694-01. And further, that the budget be adjusted to reflect these changes. And I so move.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm just here if you have questions.
Questions from council? Councilmember Sweet.
So these are similar but different technically than the ones that are currently on Michigan, like downtown.
The layperson will likely not be able to tell them apart.
Color wise, they'll be
Be black.
black, right?
These
Because that's the
will be
standard
Coming black as well.
Oh,
to make them all the DTE standard so that they can be responsible for replacement. We don't have to keep
So
stock and or pay for it. Question.
good question.
Each light is basically made up of three parts. There's the luminaire,
Yep.
there's the post, and then there's the base.
DTE
Is currently, we reached an agreement with the DTE for them to basically take over the luminaires as stock. So you'll see that some of them, even the one out here actually has a black base at the base of the light, but the pole is still green. So these poles, DTE does not have as stock fixtures because it attaches to the base in a slightly different way. So the poles of these are still non-stock. We still have to keep them in stock, rather than relying upon DTE stock. But the fixtures proposed for Washington Street will be all DTE stock. We will not have to keep back anything.
Councilmember Simmons, are you here?
Yes, so just a general question. So where it talked about the upkeep for the lights, so it'd be about $300 a year. Is that for each of them? And then, so is that what our general cost is, just in general, that's what all of our lights cost?
Yep, for a sum total of almost $500,000.
A year for streetlights.
For lights.
Yep, have enough. I don't think, but
I think it's 480. So I was rounding up, but
Councilmember Sweet.
So not part of this, but streetlight related. So well, the other ones that are not stock, like on Michigan again, for example, is the plan eventually to get those over to similar to what these will be,
plan is to paint them.
so that they become
That they will be black, right? So that we can continue to use the DTE stock luminaires. And then the poles will be painted black to match. Not many people will actually notice going by that the base of the lights are black, whereas
can't-
the
you can't
post
tell.
is.
I think the one directly out the window here,
And then there's like two over there. They've already started the changeover, but
that's it.
further questions from council about lights? Seeing none. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
All right, Councilmember Sweet, you have our next resolution. Yeah, the elevator. Woo.
Resolution number 2024-043, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas funding has been programmed in the Capital Improvement Fund for elevator modernization in City Hall in the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti has solicited sealed bids for the project, and whereas Schindler Elevator Corporation is the only qualified bidder and was recommended by the city's engineering consultant, Lurch Bates, for this project. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Ypsilanti awards the elevator modernization contract to Schindler Elevator Corporation by the revised bid amount of $499,656. Further, that the city manager authorized to sign this contract, subject to review by the city attorney, and any change orders are subject to review and approval by the city manager to facilitate the completion of this work. Further, that should the contract not be fully executed within 30 days of this authorization, the city will solicit bids once more, and I so move.
And moved and supported. Welcome back, Director West.
Good evening. And city council. So basically what it says in the RFL, this contract has gotten even more expensive over time. The process began under my predecessor. Yep, we have a choice now. We can go back out to bid, or we can sign this contract, or we can move forward and then sort of set our own little timeout clause and then go back out to bid. I very much doubt that it would be any less expensive.
And so we originally set aside how much for this?
325,000.
Okay. Questions from council while I get my bearings. Councilmember Simmons.
Okay. So I have a few, let's see here. I'm trying to see like what order to put them in, but, so yeah, I saw that there was this big increase in less than a year, and it sounded like the delays were on things on their part primarily. So of course I'm like, well, why wouldn't we actually get a break for their delay? So that was one question. I also noticed that the biggest jump, and I couldn't tell exactly what this is. I saw the biggest jump was from $88,990 to $146,986 for what said item 2, which is related work, and it said it's different section, certain section, but I wasn't sure what that is referring to.
So it wasn't entirely on them. So there are 3 sort of moving parts as part of this contract. There's the city, there's Schindler, and then there's Lurch Bates, which is sort of the project manager. Lurch Bates had a few staffing changes. Schindler had a few staffing changes. We had a few staffing changes. Everything got slowed down as part of that. During that time is when they lost their general subcontractor for the related work. So it's not the people doing the actual elevator. It's the people doing the associated work, such as the smoke alarm that's going to be in the shaft, the running some of the electrical or those related improvements, doing some of the painting, I think we have to change a door or a window up on the access hatch up top in order to get in. We have to actually close off a window for fire suppression reasons, I believe, as well. So it's all of the other stuff, not the elevator stuff.
Thanks. And then it also had said, and maybe this is because it hadn't been signed yet, because it said price escalations limited to a max of 5% over a 1-year period. But this is more than that. But is that because they're saying like, if we go into a contract that it wouldn't, so it possibly could have more increases, or do we?
So we weren't under a contract before this, as long as everybody signs it within 30 days, because we had approved it, but they had not yet signed it. Or council had approved it subject to legal review. Yes.
So we were like, oh, we're in contract, but they were like, no, we're not yet.
More or less, but we want to be in contract. So this gets us closer to being in contract and getting this executed.
And when they had the overtime, like possible overtime, there was like the 1.7 and then 2.0. I was trying to figure out what that 2.0 was, because those amounts, like that would have made me think like double, but it wasn't actually that.
Where are you at?
Page 54 of the packet.
Okay. I don't remember to bring up the actual.
And then, oh.
Okay.
It's where it's going through the
In the billing rate table?
different billing rates. And then it's like whatever, and it's like overtime, and it's like 1.7, and it's like NA, and then it's like 2, and then it has numbers in there, but those numbers don't necessarily add up, and like one of the numbers looks like it's about 1.7% additional, like time in a 7. I don't know.
So are you referring to the table where it says the billing rate, regular time, overtime premium 1.7, overtime premium
Mhm.
2.0?
Mm-hmm. I was just trying to clarify, because it does say, that they expect that this bid is for 40 hours of work.
Mhm.
And so, obviously hoping it would fit within that, but just wanting to make sure that we're clear about what the overtime.
Regular time likely includes fringe benefits, and overtime only includes base labor rate, would be my assumption, because that's how we would charge it out.
Oh, so like the amount, okay, so the amount doesn't include that other part.
Right, so in the base rate, the 234.88, you're gonna be including your fringe benefits like health insurance and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You are not gonna be including that necessarily in your overtime premium because you're not paying any more health insurance, PTO, et cetera.
Okay,
So that is not hideously unusual.
okay. And then the last one it was talking about there might be a need for barricading to do the work on it. And I just, it said it was like probably like more conversation, but just wondering whether we would expect that that we wouldn't be able to kind of move through parts of the building and things.
There's probably gonna be times where we aren't going to be able to access parts of the staircase, but those will be communicated in advance during.
Mm-hmm.
So we do anticipate at least temporary building closures. There's gonna be times when this entrance is gonna be inaccessible because they're gonna be using crane to hoist stuff onto the roof. There's gonna be times when the back parking lot is inaccessible because they'll be moving things in there, through the basement, staging things in the basement. There will be some barricading so that nobody goes into the empty elevator shaft, because there's gonna be times when the doors are open, but, nobody's home.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem, I see you getting ready, or no?
Yeah, give me a minute.
Councilmember King, you can go ahead.
I just have 2 questions because it does not outline in the contract. Will they provide the maintenance? I see on 11.
Maintenance is a separate contract, but yes. They will.
Okay.
I think the first year of maintenance is included, and then thereafter we can go out to bid with any elevator company.
Okay. And do we know how often it will need to be maintenance?
So generally with these things, you are under contract for maintenance, so that if there's an emergency, you can just call them up and they'll come out as like however many service calls. They also do quarterly inspections. For instance, 2 weeks ago, they came out and they did load testing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a question about our relationship with Lurch Bates.
Mhm.
I don't recall ever seeing Lurch Bates on this, and is this solely for this project?
Yep.
Okay.
They specialize in elevators, mechanical systems.
And so the bid process didn't bring anybody else that was qualified. How many bids did we get? We just got one.
We got one.
And so I did a little looking around and there's not a whole lot of elevator.
Nope, and we intentionally contacted each elevator company and said, hey, we're gonna be bidding this out. Please come on by. We did have lots of representatives come by, take a look at our elevator, do their own assessment, choose whether or not to bid.
Didn't bother. All right. That was, anytime I see a single bid, it's
Yep.
problematic, so.
Yep.
I'm kind of surprised at the cost of labor, but, $235 an hour for a mechanic.
I'm in the wrong profession.
You said there were 3 options. We can go ahead with this. We can totally rebid it, and there was a third option. Was it?
Bid it and just have a timeout clause, after which we'll just rebid it.
And that's what's in this resolution, though, the 30-day time.
Yeah, if the contract is not fully executed within 30 days, start over.
All set, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember McLean?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Director. So if dovetailing with Councilmember Wilcoxon's questions, if we were actually to go and bid this out, there's of course no guarantee that it would be any lower.
Mhm.
And there's the potential that it could be higher.
Mhm.
And it would set us back potentially 6 months.
Probably.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
What provisions are put in place for people who absolutely need the elevator in the downtown?
We plan to repurpose portion of this room during open hours for, to meet with customers and citizenry. Yep.
All right, further questions from council? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. City manager, I don't know what to call you sometimes. City manager, please call the roll.
Dude.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Councilmember King, you have our next two resolutions.
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following residents be appointed to the city of Ypsilanti boards and commissions as indicated below. Eric McCleary, Sustainability, I so move.
Support.
All right,
Sorry.
which one?
Elevator one?
The elevator one? Oh, it's there. Discussion or questions about this appointment? All right, seeing none, city manager.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen, Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following non-residents be appointed to the city of Ypsilanti boards and commissions as indicated below. Paula Sizemore, Sustainability, I so move.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion on this appointment? Number Sweet,
How many non-residents do we have, will this make on this commission? Do we know?
At least number 3.
Say what?
Chair and TC Collins are both non-residents, and this will be at least the third. I don't know if there's any other non-residents.
And the ordinance allows for 3 non-residents on this committee.
Will those 3 be the majority of the commission? If it, as it stands?
No. No,
Oh, okay.
there's still Julia, Brian, Shannon, Liz.
already 4 of them.
Co-chair. Vice chair.
So it's 4.
Nancy. Thank you.
Tiny.
I was like, I knew,
I'm not-
I was like, I know there's actually another person, and I was just like trying to figure out where they were sitting. Yeah.
Further discussion or additional questions on this?
Just a comment. I
Yes.
mean, she's been involved. I mean, her application kind of speaks to what she's been doing here, and I think it's a good addition. You know, I'm also, very aware of the number of non-residents in there because I was involved in appointing a couple of them. But I think she'll make a great addition to the commission.
Yeah, I just didn't want the non-resident, right, to outnumber which was not what we intended, and it sounds like that's not the case anyway.
Any other questions?
Sorry, Paul, I was
Seeing
gonna-
none, city manager, please call the roll.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Councilmember Tucson, you have our next resolution.
Yes, resolution number 2024-046, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas pretext stops can be used by an officer to include evidence that a civilian is carrying drugs or other contraband. And whereas the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office will not bring to trial cases that resulted in pretext stops. And whereas the city of Ypsilanti wants to ensure, justice is dispensed even-handedly. And whereas during their February 22nd, 2024 meeting, the Police Advisory Commission passed resolution number 2024-001 requesting that city council change policy regarding pretext stops. And now therefore be it resolved that the city council of the city of Ypsilanti ban and curtail traffic stops based on the following infractions in the city of Ypsilanti conducted by Ypsilanti Police Department. 1 cracked or chipped windshields, 2 loud exhaust, 3 tinted windows, 4 object hanging from rearview mirror unless the officer has a good faith belief that the object creates an unsafe vision obstruction, 5 cracked, broken, or burned out tail lamps where at least 1 tail lamp remains functional and properly illuminated, 6 registration plate lighting violations, 7 registration plate violations regarding plate height or attachment as described in MCL 257.225 as amended, 8 location of registration sticker, 9 location of temporary or paper registration plate so long as it remains clearly visible from the rear of the vehicle, and 10 registration expired less than 60 days prior to the date the officer observed the vehicle, and I so move.
Or
It's been moved and supported. Good evening, Chief Moore. Before, I have just like a tedious little piece here before we get into further discussion. I honestly didn't notice that it still said pretext stops in here, and it was supposed to be changed to secondary traffic violations. And then subsequently in the resolution, it should say that. So I just wanted to put that out there that, if, as we move along, if someone could amend this, so that we can correct that language. Because that is what we discussed, well, they discussed at YPAC, and it just didn't translate over to the document before we got in the packet. I did say I would have updated it, but I didn't want to miss the submission deadline when I saw it, so I do it at the table.
So what should we make that motion now?
We don't have to, as long as we do it before we vote. So if you want to do it.
Okay.
It
Oh,
could just be a friendly amendment and then I can just.
oh, cool. So friendly, and then who supported it? Mayor Pro Tem?
I
Okay,
accept.
so y'all okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for being willing to add that. All right, discussion, or Chief Moore, do you have something to share before we go into discussion? You just here for?
I was here for, just
Perfect.
anticipating.
Thank you so much.
Discussion, and then I'll.
Wonderful. Councilmember Simmons, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. So just a general thanks to YPAC for working on this and bringing it forward. And also oh, okay, yeah. So a question I have, since for Chief Moore, is when looking at this list, how many of these things are people being stopped for in general, or are these things that kind of come up anyway?
So currently, there isn't a lot of stops being conducted for these unless it's related to safety. So there are no stops being conducted for these infractions that lead to investigative detention occurring right now in the city of Ypsilanti.
Thank you. I was trying to go back and see. I was in a session with one of the lawyers that had worked on the original. I think it might have been the original, like, driving equality ordinance in Philadelphia, and that was just something that she had brought up which was like looking at some of the different things that kind of got moved out, and that left a lot of things that weren't necessarily as being used in those different ways. So I was just wondering about that. The other piece, so in the Ann Arbor one, it specifically has language or says something about no race and other protected identities to be used for stops as well. I think that would also be a good addition. And then they're also in the Philadelphia one, I think it also adds like a little bit of accountability pieces in there in terms of reports on traffic stops that are being conducted. So like there's a quarterly or I think it was quarterly maybe to a body that would be different, but maybe similar to YPAC, and then yearly to the council, just to make sure that those things are still not turning up. And then the other thing that I know I had mentioned before, but I would also like to see to add would be to also share this with the other police agencies that have jurisdiction in this area so that they're aware of this as well.
Thank you. Councilmember McLean, were you ready or?
Oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Sweet, go ahead. Listen.
So at the beginning of the resolution where it discusses the prosecutor's office now bringing to trial cases that result in secondary traffic violations, we can confirm that this list of 10 things falls within those things that they're not moving forward on.
This resolution was drafted just based off what was drafted by the YPAC.
So we don't know for sure if those things match, I guess is my question.
Councilmember Tucson, you have a response to that?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was YPAC had constructed this resolution based off of a skeleton that came from Ann Arbor PD that was forwarded by Corn. Yeah.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
All right, we can't talk him on. Sorry. So I have a snap of the resolution, but I do think it was pulled from information shared, not only in our past, but also from community members who provided some info. So I don't know if that actually aligns. Let you know just
Okay.
what is happening in.
I just wanted to make sure if if those things aligned, if that's part of it. My second question here, most of these things on this list of 10 impact mainly the driver of the vehicle, and not necessarily those around, but my one question is around the loud exhaust, especially in residential neighborhoods. That's a vague term, like what is the threshold in regards to that? Because I know that that's prevalent. And then just how do we determine what loud is? What is the
And I guess maybe to add on to your question, not to like cut in, but I guess how is that determined now? Like how would how would an officer determine I'm gonna pull you over for loud exhaust because they think it's loud or because someone called and said it's loud? Like how does that even?
Generally, it's because of a report of, a complaint. Unless it's exceedingly loud in an officer's presence and it's clearly, impacting the people in the vicinity, then you would have that.
No, those are the things that I have right now.
Mr. Barr?
The resolution now reads, whereas secondary traffic stops can be used by an officer. I'm not sure what a secondary traffic stop is.
That was just what changed pretext stop.
Right, that was what the commission asked for it to say, so I was just bringing that forward.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I do, yeah, and in the one that's in the Philly one, it does like kind of spell out what all those things mean. So it might be in the Ann Arbor one too. I don't remember. I just know I read both of those today, so.
So if I can provide just a little clarity on this topic, there's a couple things. So one, it's a little bit conflictual, and some of the things in here are pertaining to legitimate safety. Two, you're asking the police to disregard, lawful, abilities to make, traffic stops based off of observed, violations of the law. But as it relates specifically to quote unquote pretext stops, there's something to consider. The Fourth Amendment requirement of probable cause to make arrests and reasonable suspicion to conduct investigative detentions continue to provide safeguards against unreasonable police actions in these contexts. So in other words, the Fourth Amendment and the requirements, when you conduct a traffic stop, regardless of what the traffic stop is for, you still have the obligation of being able to have probable cause and articulable facts and circumstances to further and make a investigative stop out of this. The City of Ypsilanti Police Department is not in that position, and those types of stops are not occurring. Now, is there a context in which pretext stops, quote unquote, is a legitimate tool for law enforcement? And it is. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it isn't, but it is not in your everyday traffic stop. It is in an investigative tool, and the pieces of the pretext stops is designed to protect other individuals involved in the investigation.
Thank you. Councilmember McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Chief. One of the things that I look at when we're asked to consider any kind of resolution is whether or not we're providing clear guidance to the party, the department, which the resolution is directed. In this case, Chief, is it your belief that the language as it's presented here tonight provides you with clear guidance in what you would tell your officers and how to behave or behave differently?
So I think this language is, there's some conflict in the language. I think we should do a little bit more discussion and research as to the specific intent of what they're, what's the real purpose of this language and what we're trying to accomplish. So as it is now, to answer your question, it does not.
Madam Mayor and Chief, several other council members have already brought up some of those perhaps inconsistencies. And I want to say I appreciate the spirit in which this was brought forward. That list, how to operationalize the list may be somewhat problematic as it's written right now, or needs some clarification. But what really has struck me is the use of the words and the phrase ban or curtail. Ban means one thing, curtail means something different. And so I have great concern in an era where it's already difficult enough to be a police officer to not give clear direction on whether or not we want to ban something or curtail it. To be judicious about using it, or to simply say, don't do it at all. And so I think we've got enough, as others have said. I think there's reason to look at this, to study it. There's also the issue of other jurisdictions that may be impacted by the spirit of what YPAC was trying to do. I think there's a lot going on here that needs a lot more study. I'd be very uncomfortable voting on this as it stands right now, Madam Mayor, and so therefore I'll move to table.
Is motion to table, is there support?
I support.
Are we?
No discussion on the table.
I figured. I had something, but it's okay. So please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
No.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No, no discussion, right? Okay.
with 5 yes and 2 no, the motion carries. The item's tabled.
And then what is, has to be brought back to the table?
It has to be brought back at the next meeting.
Next meeting. We're not allowed to discuss. I had something to say, but okay, I'll say it during my business, my proposal. All right, well, it'll be brought back at the next meeting. So, these questions and things can be shared so we can try to fix it.
What is the process for bringing those things to this? Or do we bring that at the time of the next meeting? Can we amend this in any other way before that?
Mr. Barr? Yeah, that part I don't know. How do we co-work on this now?
Well, it's, if you're asking, can you do that now, the motion has been tabled, so it's off the table.
Right.
So to do anything with it, you have to bring it back to the table. It means that someone voting on the prevailing side would have to move to consider, and you could bring it back to reconsider it, and open it up. Or council, or city council to get direction to staff as to how you want it. Otherwise, you can move it back without, unless there's some input without any change.
So we can provide input individually to the city manager and / clerk on this, and then it could be brought back. And it will be brought back in the next meeting.
and we can then discuss what those things are. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I would, if it does come back, or when it comes back, I'd recommend we get careful thought together for the termination, or for the terms,
Mhm.
so that we don't back from what we're talking about. So the police officer, prosecutor has an idea, clear idea of what it.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Okay. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Got it. All right, we are on to our discussion with Nathan Vogt. I thought I saw him on there.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
He is not.
On the Zoom.
He's not here.
Hi. About the Act 381 Brownsville Act amendments.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. Mayor
Problem.
and Council, happy to be here. Well, not be there. I wish I could be there. Sorry. I'm remote today, but you're going to see me soon, I'm sure. There's a lot going on, and we thought this was an opportune time for me just to kind of update you all, well, reintroduce myself, but also update you on an amendment to the Brownfield Act that might be something you'll see used soon. But this is going to be just a little recap of the Brownfield program, and then this new amendment that is pretty interesting, I will say. So I'm Nathan Vogt. I work for Washtenaw County Office of Community and Economic Development, and I staff the Brownfield Authority, the County Brownfield Authority. And do I control the slides, Andrew, or do you have to change them? Oh, thanks. So we formed in 1999 after Act 381 was put into effect in 1996. Actually, the city of Ypsi beat us. You all formed the first authority. And then we formed an authority and invited the entire county to sort of participate and join our regional authority. Pretty much the whole county did. We've only got a few outlying townships that do not belong or participate with our program. And all this means is that we assist local units in projects, in brownfield plans, and then we can carry those projects up through the County Board of Commissioners. And then on the back end, the administration, we handle a lot of the tax capture with the local treasurers and the reimbursements. And so we offload those tasks from cities like Ypsilanti and other townships. In the city, we've, of course, been involved with various projects. Peninsular Paper was actually a city project. Mellencamp Building, Thompson Block, Water Street, of course, recently Dorsey Estates, 206 Washington, and of course, 2 West Michigan. And we're involved in those current projects quite heavily. Go to the next slide. Thanks. And I just went back through kind of my memory because I've been doing this for 12 years now, and thinking about all the ways we've been able to assist the city with various projects. So not only can we help you put in place TIF, like with a brownfield plan, but we also have a growing pot of dollars to help do assessments, do environmental assessments, and even give out larger chunks for grants and loans from our local brownfield revolving fund. And you can see, as you know, we helped Water Street there with the remediation of the trail. Of course, Dorsey Estates, some larger assessments for like 2 West Michigan, and then a handful of other projects we've assisted. And I neglected to add for the Avalon project on Washington, maybe it got bumped off. We provided a fairly sizable LBRF grant to assist that project. I think it's $700,000, and I should have added that to that list. So just going back to Brownfield 101, the whole purpose of Act 381 is really to level the playing field between greenfields and brownfields. And if you look at the eligible activities that you can TIF, you can finance through TIF, they are directly related to extraordinary costs, brownfield conditions on sites, or they're associated with the complications of infill development. So that's where the MEDC, or the non-environmental activities for core communities, Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor, can be taken advantage of, that really relate to how difficult it is to redevelop tight urban sites. And so that gets into infrastructure and special urban fill, special foundations, and those sorts of things. And then finally, this new piece is the MISHDA piece, where This act was amended. I'm gonna get into this in a little bit more detail later, but that's where you can directly support or finance affordable housing developments or market rates developments as well, using the Brownfield Act. I think you all are familiar, but there's various ways that sites can become eligible under Act 381. The most common is the facility status, when you do a soil test and something comes up where it exceeds a certain criteria. But in IPSI, we've used functionally obsolete and blighted as well. Thompson Block, I think, was designated either functionally obsolete or blighted, or maybe both. Historic could be a way to get in, TOD, and then finally housing property is the new definition that we're going to talk about a little bit. And again, just talking about tax increment financing, I always describe it as a win-win. Any existing taxes paid by a property that is proposed for redevelopment will continue to be paid to all the taxing jurisdictions. But if a brownfield plan is approved to finance certain activities, then the project happens, the taxable value goes up. Only the increase in taxes is what is captured and used for reimbursing certain activities that were critical to making the project happen. And so the three different buckets of types of activities I've already touched on. Environmental is the most typical. That is the traditional brownfield activities, environmental investigation, soil contamination, groundwater, demolition of buildings, asbestos, lead, etc. And of course, vapor intrusion is a big one that is much more up and coming these days, with more focus on former dry cleaning sites, etc. And then the next category is MEDC, is overseen by MEDC, and it's non-environmental activities. I refer to these as the infill type activities that really help those complicated former urban smaller sites sometimes. And that's where we get into stormwater management, public sewer water utilities, site preparation, special foundations related to urban fill, etc. And again, only core communities in the county can take advantage of this traditional non-environmental activities that MEDC reviews. And then finally, the new one we'll talk a little bit more about is a housing development activities. And we are waiting for more detailed guidance from MSHDA, but the big advantage here is, if you're outside of a core community, so if you're a Dexter or if you're an Ypsilanti Township, you could do a housing development and go through this brownfield process and take advantage of what traditionally you could not take advantage of, which is public infrastructure and what MSHDA calls necessary safety improvements, even acquisition, demolition, even cost to relocate households that might be impacted. So this is a huge advantage potentially to those non-core communities to now use some of those non-environmental activities. But for Ypsilanti, of course, you can already do this because you're a core community. Just in terms of the process, because we're a regional authority and the city of Ypsi has agreed to participate with us, we always work at the local level first. So you always have the first option to consider a brownfield plan. And if you don't approve a brownfield plan, it doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't go up to the Brownfield Authority or up to the Board of Commissioners. But the process is generally local unit for the brownfield plan, carry that up through to the County Board of Commissioners. We hold the public hearing. We do the taxing jurisdiction notification. And then in order to secure the capture of school taxes, you have to submit what's called a work plan. And that's approved by Eagle if there's environmental activities, or MEDC if there's not environmental. And then again, MSHDA now, if we're talking about a housing development work plan. And just to remind everybody, this act, the Brownfield Act, is special in that it still does not have an opt-out provision for taxing jurisdictions. If the local unit, if you all decide to approve a brownfield plan and decide to capture all of the available millages, those taxing jurisdictions do not have the ability to opt out. And it really allows this tool to be very powerful. We can bring to bear all of the taxing jurisdictions that are available for a particular site. to help redevelop it and reimburse and finance activities as quick as possible. If there is an existing TIF district like a DDA, usually it's a DDA, they do have first say in that capture for their millages. And so an interlocal agreement would be required for the DDA to forego the capture of the taxes for the brownfield purposes. We did this for Thompson Block. For the Centennial Building site would be another one that if that comes through, the DDA will have to consider that. And just full disclosure, I work with other brownfield authorities around the state, and this was a PowerPoint that I've sort of riffed off from one of those other BRAs. They said it'd be fine to use it. So, but it's pretty good. So that's why I decided to put it in here. So in terms of the MSHDA housing amendment, again, this is an amendment to 381. Everything in 381 stayed. We added this new housing development or housing property option. The project must serve affordable units that would be sold or rented to families that earn no more than 120% of AMI. And that's sort of a statewide ceiling that MSHDA has put in place. And so eligible property is actually very broad. This changed over the course of the legislation being drafted, but if you have one unit, technically, that's going to be constructed or rehabilitated, that is a housing property. Now, the economies of scale don't work for one house, but it is possible. And it could be in a mixed use building as well. I don't need you to worry too much about there's a pretty detailed formula here. But the way that MSHDA is saying communities and brownfield authorities should calculate what a potential affordable housing subsidy might be for a developer is a certain formula, and they take HUD published data, they take the fair market rent and come up with a control rent, and then they say, okay, developer, you're going to provide X number of units at 100% or 60% AMI. What is the monthly rent for those units? And then we come up with a delta, and then we multiply by the number of units, by the number of months, and come up with an annualized number. And then we can incorporate that number into a brownfield plan as additional eligible activities, essentially, to be reimbursed over so many years. And this is just a formula that MSHDA has put out there for the entire state to use as a guide to calculate that subsidy number. In terms of process, this is really similar to what I already stated. The local unit always would approve a plan first, just like I said. There would be some notifications that go to MSHDA that they want to know when a brownfield plan is being considered. There would be a reimbursement agreement, just like always, except now there's some housing pieces that have to be in that reimbursement agreement. We need to know, and that reimbursement agreement, by the way, would be between the county authority and the developer. The city, I don't think would need to be a party to that agreement. But this agreement now with a housing development would include the requirements that the developer rent or sell the units at the rates specified, for the duration specified, and that there's annual reporting that would be required. And then we have to report annually, just like we do now, to MSHDA on all of the developments that have affordable units that have been subsidized through this act. Same thing again, remember the work plan, you've got the brownfield plan, then the work plan is required, and then I mentioned the reporting. Some other things that are kind of new for this to keep in mind, interest is allowed if a developer is borrowing more money to pull off a project and their carrying costs for those loans. The interest could be added as a reimbursable expense, just like it is now for environmental and non-environmental activities. So that's still available. We have an administrative option through the MEDC for projects that include housing development activities. And then MSHDA does have some funds that developers could tap into as loans in order to assist with these projects. So that's kind of a new thing. And then the other thing that they sort of mentioned in passing that we haven't seen published yet, but MISTA's considering allowing things like solar and geothermal to be financed through tax increment financing. MEDC does not allow that. So that's a huge advancement and potentially very useful. And just some other details that you don't have to worry too much about now, but there is a nice piece here. All the BRAs, the brownfield authorities can capture more annual administrative costs. And those are the costs that we capture on all of our projects every year that pay for the program, pay for my salary, but also fund the environmental assessment grant program that we've used around the county, including, like I mentioned, in the city of Ypsi to help projects do environmental assessments. So we're going to be able to bump that up starting this year. They also added that pilot payments for fee in lieu of taxes can be captured, which was sort of controversial, but that is nonetheless in the act now. And now the definition of blighted, which was one of the eligibility options, now includes previously developed property that was owned by a state or a municipality. So makes it easier then to potentially qualify some sites. So the MISTA does have a website. They have draft additional guidelines that they are sending out to the brownfield authorities for some comment. But this is if you're curious to see more, this is a great site. It has FAQs, etc. I would encourage you to take a look at that. We are monitoring it closely, I can tell you. And then, so some of the things happening right now, I'm having a lot of discussions with various communities and various developers. Just today, we talked to J297 that bought the Centennial Building, and we're talking through, how can we make projects work? How can we make them work using this new tool? What makes sense? What policy considerations do local units have to consider? I'm talking to various Ann Arbor developers as well, one in Dexter. So we will be discussing these more with you as projects come to you. But nonetheless, these conversations are happening. Things like AMI, what level of AMI is appropriate? You might have a policy, let's say, like Ann Arbor has a policy of 60% AMI. But what we're finding is when you plug those rents or those sale prices into the formula, it's actually too much subsidy and it can never be paid off based on the taxable value of the project. So there may need to be for these projects an adjustment of what that local policy is in terms of those affordable households and what level of income you're willing to support. So we're just feeling our way through the guidance and trying to figure out what is best policy. Again, I mentioned the tools for non-core communities is really, really important. And also this apparent amendment to the act that if you look at the language closely, it seems to allow market rate housing developments to use this tool as well, which I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but it would play out probably in communities that are non-core communities because, again, they can't avail themselves of infrastructure and site prep and those other non-environmental activities. So potentially you could have a community saying, hey, we want to support this housing project, even though they're not regulated affordable units, we want to support it because it's going to increase the supply of new housing. And there's a finance gap in the project that's been demonstrated. So we're going to TIF some of that finance gap and help this project happen. So that's sort of an interesting take on this amendment. So hope I didn't take too much time and get too much into the details. I tried to keep it mostly high level. There's my contact information. I think you all know me. Are there any questions or anything I can answer at this time?
Any questions for Mayor Pro Tem? Yes.
Hi, Nathan. Thanks for the presentation. I do have a question about the how this pertains to pilots. We've got quite a number of pilots here, and I'm trying to figure out how the TIF would work for the pilot.
I've got the same question, to be honest with you, because there must be scenarios that the drafters of this law were considering that I can't quite imagine, because if you've got a pilot, you've got usually a nonprofit involved and a non-taxable entity, so there's no property taxes being paid. So why would you want to take and capture the pilot, which is usually a much smaller number? I don't have a good answer for you at this moment.
Just the mechanism of that. So if somebody's making a payment in lieu of the taxes, then they're getting reimbursed through
Well,
the TIF?
presumably it would flow the same way that ad valorem taxes do, which is the city of Ipsy would be sending those captured pilot funds to the Brownfield Authority, and then we would be issuing reimbursements, theoretically.
To the city.
Well, no, to the developer.
Right, so yeah. It seems like double dipping on the part of the developer, because they're getting away with paying typically less than the ad valorem tax. And then they're getting money back from that as well, and that
I agree, it's wonky. This ultimately is at your discretion. It's at the local unit's discretion, all of these incentives. So you will be in the driver's seat to, if this were ever to come to you, to determine whether it makes any sense. And I can't see right now how it makes sense.
Hi, Nathan. So I have a few questions just for clarity. One is just, so I had the same kind of question, so I'll skip over that one. One, there was the conversation around the blighted property that now can include municipal, like, however it was stated in terms of things previously developed by municipalities, and that's a new thing that's being allowed to be used for that. So just for clarity, because obviously we just last meeting, we had a conversation about a lot of the city's different properties and spaces. And so would that mean that this is something that the city could apply for to help support doing work on any of those buildings?
Well, the only advantage in using this new definition would be if the city were looking to dispose of the property for economic development purposes, and then ultimately it were purchased by a developer that would be paying taxes on it. And then this path would then qualify the site under Act 381 for using TIF to finance certain activities, assuming that the property wasn't blighted under the traditional definition, or it wasn't contaminated. It was just owned by the city and you wanted to, sell it to get it redeveloped.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's good clarification. And then there was also, in terms of the conversation about AMI, so I know this comes up a lot here, in terms of thinking about how things could look different for us if we actually had a more localized area median income standard, and looking at other places that use something like that. And so when you were talking about that, it's kind of about how to get things kind of right priced for what happened? Wait, is he still there? Are you still there, Nate?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, and so you were saying that, so in Ann Arbor, they were finding that it was the amounts weren't working just in terms of because of the market rate being such a big difference.
That's right. So because this is, as you know, you all are lumped in the entire county, and the Ann Arbor market kind of pushes these numbers up that are determined in this metropolitan area. And so it does skew, right? A skew thing. So So the only thing for you all to consider would be I mean, just like the conversation we had with Dorsey Estates, right? Where there was a lot of discussion about what AMI levels were a good target. And you'd have to have that same discussion, I think, with any developer, any housing development that wanted to use this tool. You'd have to look at the AMI published for the county and determine what is appropriate for the city.
And then who can use it said the school operating taxes, the 250,000 that could be used for things like mold abatement and things like that.
Yeah, I think this amendment, and I'm looking at just on my own screen. I think the advantage here is that often a project is getting legs and it's moving very fast, and the developer has acquired the property and they want to start work. And it's a very tedious process to go through the state approvals. And often you can't if you do work before state approval, you can't get reimbursed for it. And so they're often held up for months. So I think this is just saying, hey, you can do up to 250,000 if you need to get into a building, remove asbestos, hazardous materials, and kind of get going on your project. In the meantime, you're submitting for state approval. We're still going to reimburse you for that. The state is saying.
Great, thank you. And then I just wanted that you had noted that, or I don't know if it was noting or just a question in terms of affordability requirements going longer than the TIF requirement. So having a longer affordability period. I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. And so what MSHDA requires is that, and this is sort of obvious, like if you come up with a brownfield plan and a housing subsidy that takes 20 years to pay off, you can't have an affordability period of 15 years, right? Because then you're paying a developer theoretically those 5 years and they're not delivering or not providing the housing. So MSHDA only says you at least have to have an affordability period that is at least the duration of the brownfield reimbursement period. The debate is, we've been in this position, as you all know, the former high school on Cross Street, like that was approved in the 90s with only a 15-year affordability period. And then you get into a situation in 15 short years where those affordable rates suddenly get jacked up to market and push people out. And so the discussions I've been having with Ann Arbor, and we should be having with Ypsilanti as well, is, should there be a minimum of affordability period considered for any project that the city wants to support using this tool? Ann Arbor is probably going to say 30 years, no matter what, because that's sort of matching the maximum that a brownfield plan could be. So that's sort of the policy debate of using this tool, capturing a lot of public tax monies for a public purpose, but then only having it, be a benefit for a short number of years.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Further questions for Nathan? Any? Do you want to ask something?
I'm just curious about the timing of this. I mean, I appreciate that since I'm going to the planning commission tomorrow night and there's going to be a site plan being proposed from the Centennial from J297. This has been very helpful. I'm curious as to how a lot of this is going to play out in that development. When it first came up, I didn't realize there were so many other things in the brownfield that don't necessarily fit under my definition of brownfield, but it'll be interesting to see how this is going to be proposed for that. And this is then up to the developer to have that conversation. So they're having that conversation with you now. But it's also a tool that the city can use to engage. So if if a developer is ignorant of this, which I can't imagine how they'd be a developer and be ignorant of these, but we could use this and introduce this to their plan.
Sure, it becomes another tool in our toolbox to incentivize development in the city, for sure. And Andrew is there and he can speak to some of the meetings that we've been having, but we have been meeting fairly intensely with J297. We're working through timelines. We're working through what a potential brownfield plan looks like. Part of the challenge here is we've never approved one of these plans. We've never used this MSHA tool, so we're kind of feeling our way and trying to look at the intent of what MSHA is doing. Look and do what we can to figure out a way to help the project. But so those are ongoing discussions. We're meeting very often, and there is more coming soon.
Additional questions or comments?
Just a follow-up question. How helpful is MSHA in this? I mean, are they also operating kind of in blind on this as well?
When they were handed these amendments, I mean, they were charged with coming up with all of the policy and the guidance and the guidelines. So they worked very intensely late summer and fall, published some draft guidelines. They got feedback from brownfield authorities around the state, including ours. They're the agency that's going to be implementing these plans. They've been very good to work with, by the way. They've got a 2 or 3 staff people that are very busy right now, just doing a lot of talking, and I can't say enough good things about their willingness to help at this point.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks for being with us, Nathan, and explaining all of this confusing stuff.
Happy to do it. Thanks so much for having me.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too.
Okay. All right, we are on to our second discussion regarding the process for both interviewing and grading the applicants for city clerk. So, city manager, let me ask you, when this was added on, I mean, in terms of grading, we're just literally deciding how do we plan to rank and move forward?
This was added by council members Simmons and King.
Oh,
And then they provided this scoring sheet as a draft. So I believe they would be best to speak towards this.
all right, well, Councilmember Simmons or King, if you'd like to start.
So, absolutely. We just wanted to create some sort of process to discuss the candidates before just making a decision. So this is what we came up with, just like we did for a city manager, kind of, we had an evaluation and we made this so we can kind of discuss the candidates.
Okay, thank you. So questions or, discussion on this?
So you're intending this to be one of these sheets for each one of the candidates, right?
Yeah.
So would each have 4 of these sheets, would go through that and it's not necessarily ranking at that point, but just for notes.
Yeah, and so folks could decide, like at the bottom, it has kind of an overall, like whatever what ranking would be. So that could be for each of those areas. Those areas were pulled from looking at the position description and pulling forward, the key competencies and things. And so really, we were just wanting to make sure that we're not kind of going into it blind, because obviously the last process, we had someone that facilitated for us and they already provided us with these things. And so we just want to have something that can feel consistent so that we're all looking at similar information, and then also just being clear about what the ranking is, like what that means, because I feel like there was some confusion before. So we just want to kind of put that forward now so that when we're actually in the interviews that we already have it figured out. And then so yeah, and then any other parts of the process or plan that people that we, you know, we should think about now. It's just that because council has to lead the process. So we wanted to put something in front of folks, as we were kind of trying to think about what it would look like on Thursday.
So basically, were these sections taken from the city manager form, or these are just ones that were?
No.
Okay.
No, these were literally just going through the position description and like pulling things out. You know, kind of going through the different areas. We had started in to also try to like map the questions to each of them. But you know, we didn't want to get too deep because, you know, figured that folks have things to add or think about that we could do that before we, you know, or somebody else might have a different way of thinking about it. So
Discussion, questions? I guess what I'm looking at here, I think this is a good path to put notes and things and kind of try to have a way to rank individuals. Ultimately, it's a vote of council. So I think this is just going to be for our individual kind of notes so we can have the same information that we're looking at together. So I'm fine using this. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts. Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I did have a question about that. So, you know, when Amy Cell was facilitating and some of those questions, it's like they wanted that feedback at the end of the evening. That didn't go into wasn't really put in a place that we could see it prior to the next meeting until we asked for it. The question is, does this, what is the timeline for this? If this is something we're just keeping notes on, and then when we have the discussion, I can understand that. Is there any desire to have these submitted and tabulated?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that's a question for if we wanted to have something to get a sense of where the consensus of council is, like, which is what that was used for. And then and the other thing is like even when thinking about a vote from council, I'm just wondering about how that process will go. As in like because we have a couple of different ways that it happens, so I'd like just to have some clarity on like what to expect for that.
I would presume that it would go similar to what we have done before, where it comes up on the agenda to make a choice, and then someone makes a motion with the name or the person.
Mm-hmm.
There's support, discussion, vote similarly, and if it passes, it passes. If it fails, we move on to the next person. It has to be passed by resolution, so it has to go that way no matter what, no matter how it's presented on the table.
And so this would be submitted, tabulated, that information would be sent back out to council members, and then the decision timeline is the next council meeting, April 2nd.
That's our decision, right? We have to decide what that would be too.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm just clear.
Oh, yeah.
Stating it to clarify that that's how we've done it in the past.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a problem with the Open Meetings Act of submitting these, having tabulated and sent back out?
I was wondering about that, yeah. Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
There is a problem?
That's not a problem, it's just a fact.
Right. This is why I've normally we take our own notes, like Amy Cell was doing it, so therefore it wasn't, they were getting all the information because we chose to do this process on our own, so Mr. Barr's point stands there. Councilmember King?
So I'm just wondering, what other way can we kind of have the conversation? I know in the past, sometimes the community members felt like they didn't know why we came to this conclusion. So for us, I think we also was thinking about just being transparent with the community as well. So if this is an issue, what is the other option for us?
Discussion in an open meeting, like we've done in the past. We did it for city manager, even with the tabulated information, we still discussed in open meeting folks' viewpoints, who we wanted to make an offer to. I would think, unless Mr. Barr, you have something else that,
No, that's the way it's generally been done.
The objection or the problem with the OMA is that if this were disseminated to us privately before the meeting, but if it's put into the agenda, just the tabulation, not necessarily the notes, but the number ranking, would that suffice?
If it's a process of city council and it's a document that's public record, then it's available to the public.
Yeah, that's how I think I was thinking of it possibly. Not so much that we would kind of have it, but that it would be something that would pull together all of the information from folks from the interview so that we can kind of see that when we have the conversation at our, you said April 2nd meeting.
so my question would be, just around, I'm a process person, so everybody would complete a sheet for each person. And then those scores would be tabulated. And then the scores alone would be sent to go into the next council packet. Not sent out to everybody here, but sent back to be put into the packet for folks to be able to see prior to the April 2nd meeting.
And the question is,
Yeah.
well, I
I
guess.
mean, we would see it when we got our packets, yeah.
Right.
Right.
I would have to collect everybody's sheets and then I'd tabulate it and I put it in the next packet for April 1st.
So that was gonna be my next question. You have to do that?
I mean, have to, I guess, one of council members, but I just think it would be easiest. if we
Right.
did it.
Okay. So I guess I was going, my line of thinking. I was going down the line of like how we did the interview questions, but then with the, I don't know, never mind.
Okay.
Never mind.
So then that brings up the timeline for doing that, when they were asking for these and, you know, the two of us are sitting here going, oh, yeah, like, what did they say about number 5? We have, till Monday, till Tuesday
To submit the.
to submit that to, yeah. Do we give ourselves a week? Do we want that to be immediate? I don't want to be that night, that's for sure.
Well, no. I mean, it would be up to.
Mhm.
Councilmember King?
So I was gonna say, if Andrew is gonna be doing it, like, what your suggestion, when would you want them back?
If I could get them back by Wednesday, that would be easiest for me.
That next one.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that feels.
And so we'd be using this to lead the discussion, basically, so folks have an understanding of where people are.
Right.
Okay. I'm, sorry, Andrew, I was gonna see if it was something that I had to do, to not say you didn't have to do it, but I don't know if that it would even make it harder. I'm not sure.
No, that's fine. And then they, I guess, whomever hire come on May, on April. Assuming.
So, Councilmember Sweet and.
Is there, so these tabulations would be in the council packet, right? Is there concern that the candidates would see this before a decision is being rendered?
Imagine would see it, yes.
Okay. Okay.
But also, not to, maybe to be honest, that doesn't mean anything until we make a motion.
Yes.
If you want to hire, so I mean, they could see something, it might not align with that, who knows? Not that, So if we interview on the 21st, then we would have these tabulation sheets back to Andrew by the 27th. And then we make a decision on April 2nd.
And I could, when I tabulate them, I could just tabulate them by question or rank or section, I guess. And then you could, rather than having an overall number, it would just be by section, or I can do sections and an overall number, really whatever.
I think before we had it was both sections and overall.
I'll submit mine with a spreadsheet, so. Just fill it in.
All right, further discussion, Councilmember King, you had your hand up, but then you put, did you get? I don't know, okay. Any,
Do have one more thing before council moves on. One of the applicants has requested to interview virtually. I did send an email regarding that, and I just would
Mhm.
like to know what council would like to do. I was not going to make that decision for council. The applicant is aware that this is being determined at this meeting.
all right, council thoughts?
I am okay with a person being interviewed virtually just because it is late. We don't, I'm okay with it.
Is there like, since this meeting is also being live streamed, correct?
Yeah.
So is it any concern that they might already get a jump on what the questions are and, you know?
Yeah, you can't control that.
Very real possibility.
Yeah, we can't control.
Unless
that.
we make that person first.
Yeah, let's
Mm.
do that person
Yeah.
first.
I like that. I like that idea. I mean, I think that there's ways that people can probably get a jump no matter what, you know, you just gotta have a 1 and a 2. So, I mean, just to say that, but I do think that, you know, if that person goes first, then that would mitigate that even further.
I personally, I'm opposed to the virtual interview. I think, for me, I prefer, I want to see someone, I want to, feel their energy. I want to know, I want to experience them as best as possible. And going through things like this during the pandemic, virtual was really hard to actually like get a full scope, of the folks we were interviewing, talking with. And I know that this is it's a huge part of the world now. I get it, but it's just not my preference. But I will go with the will of the body. I also think, are we offering that opportunity to everyone? Is to say if you want to, I don't know.
Be up to council.
And I'm just putting it out there.
I will say that the order has been set already. So we would have to shuffle that around.
Folks could be there. Yeah.
I'll ask a question that may not even have an answer, but do we know why?
Human resources just said that the applicant had that preference. I'm not entirely sure, but it is possible that I know that there is the Clerks Institute this week and next week, so it's possible that one of the applicants is there. But I don't know for sure.
And that's what I was gonna ask. Andrew said it was their preference. I was wondering, is that the only option for this candidate? I was wondering if we knew that.
I don't know if it's the only option. I just know that they requested this.
Mr. Barr.
I think this is an important issue and there should be a motion and a vote.
Thanks. Councilmember McLean?
I would share the mayor's perspective, or at least preference for having the person here in person. I'm also willing to go with the will of the body. But if we do go that route and we're concerned about one or more of the candidates getting an unfair advantage with the questions, it would be possible to simply share the questions with everybody. Then they'd all have the same advantage. And they'd have to prepare in a rather different way, but they don't know. Some of the questions we ask shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Simmons, then Sweet.
Were you gonna ask a question or?
No, I was just gonna make a comment, so.
Well, go ahead and make your comment.
Oh, I say I would prefer them in person, but I'm okay and open to a virtual interview, based on the request.
So I was gonna say, like, in lots of ways, I also prefer in-person things, but also, going through the process before, I didn't necessarily feel like we got much more feel if people were like in, out. So I didn't necessarily feel like, had that much of a personal touch. And so, especially without necessarily knowing the reasons and the person, make a request, there could be so many reasons for it. So I would move to accept the request to do a virtual interview.
Support. Moved and supported. Discussion on the motion. Mayor Pro Tem?
Was it your intent to have them be first or as Councilman McLean said, to just distribute the questions to make this an even playing field?
I would say be first.
Okay. Question. So what happens if folks have already prepared to be here at a particular time and they can't, city manager, if they can't change time?
If they can't change times, then it would create a situation.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that's a possibility, right? Okay. I don't have it.
Can we know what candidate it is?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Everybody stated their preference. I prefer in person as well. This is a significant position, and it's also a significant event in all of the candidates' lives. And it seems like this being in person for a job interview for something of this magnitude would take precedent. I can certainly appreciate that there are limitations in everybody's lives with that they can't make a meeting, but this is going to be something that is those kinds of priorities are going to have to be weighed by this person in this role. And I think that having that person be here, I personally, I would never think to ask that question of any job interview that I was going to. If it's, I've done multiple job interviews where the first one is virtual and, there's always an in-person component to it, but I think it should be in person.
Other discussion before we vote? Councilmember Simmons?
So just to say, I do think, when thinking about different reasons, obviously there could be different conflicts that could be happening, which could include a professional conference, which we would want them to have gone through to be the clerk. So just to say that, but I also think there's also different accessibility things too that could happen for people. Like I know a number of people who actually don't like driving at night. And since some of the folks their interview times aren't until after dark as well, I think that might be something else that might come into play. I think there's a difference between like when somebody already makes a commitment to a position and when you're in an application process, in terms of expectations. So I just like to have just fair expectations in that way. So anyway, I just want to put that forward as well, that there might be other reasons, and so not to just kind of judge based on, whatever.
Councilmember McLean?
I think I find Councilmember Wilcoxon's arguments pretty compelling, even though granting everything that Councilmember Simmons just said, I think points are all valid. But this is a significant position for the city. I think I'd like to see him come, and I'd like to have him be here. But we're gonna potentially create an unfair advantage for that person with the questions. We're in effect judging them on a slightly different playing field. And I'm all for flexibility, but I think we're far enough down this path that it's to be a difficult one to do it in a way that's fair to all the candidates.
Thank you. Yeah, I love flexibility. I also think I thought about one of the things that Councilmember Simmons, you said about not wanting to drive at night. And I know that's a real concern for a lot of folks. I immediately thought though, this role would literally be here with us all night. Even, if that was the case, because I'm like, our meetings sometimes they get wild. So I would hope they take consideration of that too, if that were the case. Not saying it is, you know, because I'm like, our meetings can go real long. But yeah, so further discussion or any questions before we vote?
Just one last thing, just to say, which is that given, for instance, our preference, a person interviewing online seems to be more of a detriment than a benefit, you know? So I just want to name that, like, in terms of like the advantage. I don't know that being virtual is an advantage in that way, because obviously they're on these screens. And so that's a very real situation too. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
I could just clarify the motion. It's to allow to interview virtually and have them go first, or are we giving the questions?
Who made the motion?
Well, we made the motion. I think Michelle seconded and said,
I would say go first. That would be my suggestion.
Go virtual and go first. You raise your hand, Mayor Tim, or did you?
No, I was just going to make an amendment if that was in order. That was all.
Oh, okay. All right. And we're clear. Everything good? We're ready to vote? All right. City manager, please call the roll.
Mayor Brown.
Oh. No. No.
Councilmember Sweet.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
No.
Councilmember Simmons.
yes.
Councilmember McLean.
No.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
No.
Motion fails with 3 yes, 4 no.
And so this is with the full understanding that, like, for instance, if this person cannot be here in person, then they will no longer be interviewing. I'm talking to council. Sorry, not to you, to council. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And if that happens, will the times remain the same? I'm just
We would
wondering.
probably have to, because we have a
I,
schedule.
we have a schedule, but I could ask the last person if they'd be willing to change. If they would not be, then yes, we would just have to have a recess.
Mr. Barr.
For education, I'd suggest if we do have another interview process, this be made known at the beginning.
Yes, sir. Agreed. Because we need to process. Yes. Thank you,
Oh,
Mr. Barr. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So because you wouldn't be able to ask the candidate until the day of, right?
I don't,
Once you find out, like, if they say, no, I can't interview anymore, then maybe, then he.
right.
No.
So we will inform the candidate tomorrow that they must appear in person. If they explain that they're not going to be able to do that, we'll say then you are no longer going to interview. And then we will ask the person that goes last if they would like to change, if they would mind coming earlier. And that's what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Boards and commissions, police advisory.
Yes, we have a meeting on March 28th, 2024 at 7 p.m. right here in council chamber. So if you would like to know what is going on in your city with your police department, or you have anything to say to the body or anybody in attendance, please show up. We would love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Human relations.
Our meeting this month was canceled due to clerk interviews. We will meet next month, April the 18th.
Thank you. Parks and Arts.
Met yesterday evening. Several things were discussed, including the embracing our differences, which was unanimously supported by that commission, and will come to council next for approval. And then we also discussed a like photo documenting program for Peninsular Park, with the opportunity down the road to expand to other places to document over time maps, photos. And then we're going to be working on ordinance conversation as well.
Thank you. Sustainability.
Yes, so let's see here. So yeah, we had our meeting on March 11th, and the commissioners connected with Ypsi Township, Pittsfield Township, and Superior Township about the Resiliency Hub Network, and there was interest there. And also nonprofit org got a grant to help support some of that work and doing community outreach around that project. The different each commissioner shared priorities for a work plan for each, and so there was a couple of areas that kind of came up across the commissioners, which included things like neighborhood resiliency hub network, greening urban spaces, and pedestrian and cycling hubs, and weatherization. They also, just so for folks to know, that the April meeting was canceled because it happens during the eclipse. Well, that might not be the exact reason, but also there was an invitation by Commissioner Foley, May 12th. They're going to be painting the basketball court in Park Ridge Park. There was also interest in there being a work group. So this is something that would be good for council to think about if anybody's interested. There is interest in the commission to have a work group on emergency planning related to climate crisis, and thinking about different folks who might want to be a part of that. And so if folks on council are interested in that, you can let me or the chair, Beth Gibbons, know. And then they also, there was also interest, during that meeting, there was a conversation about, the county, services that are being proposed to be moved out of the area. And, so there was interest by that commission for there to be a presentation to council on that, on that plan and what would be happening with that. And so I think one of the commissioners was going to be trying to identify a potential speaker for that. Yeah, so I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. HDC.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Commission met on Tuesday, March the 12th, went over renovations and or repairs to multiple properties, including steel exhaust pipe removal at 214 Maple, 2 new signs at 307 North River Street, renovation and windows extensive at 302 East Cross, and basement window and coal chute door at 411 North Huron. The one that I will point out, the 302 East Cross, is of some note. It's on Cross Street, prominent location, has been under construction to varying degrees for years. And so I think this was a positive development to see the new owner taking the renovations pretty seriously.
Thank you. Planning Commission.
Planning Commission meets tomorrow, and I've already referenced the site plan for the Centennial Building will be on that. And I anticipate that a lot of people will come out there. The last commission meeting, there was a lot of folks that submitted comments about the impact that will have on parking. I've received other notes from folks in this week about that parking situation with that as well. So stay tuned.
ZBA? I don't think there's any meeting. All right. SEMCOG.
General Assembly is coming up this week. And unfortunately, I can't make it to that. It's middle of the workday, but I'll try to bring an update on what happened at that.
Thank you. Watts?
We didn't meet this month.
Okay, thank you. Urban County, I missed the meeting. I didn't realize it was the last week. Yeah, sorry. Oh, you were there? Anything? Because I definitely missed it. No? Okay. Perfect. DDA meets on Thursday. Rutherford Pool?
They meet tomorrow as well, so I'm gonna have to miss that meeting. They're looking forward to the resurfacing and getting that after the last two meetings. We've put that into motion so they can get to work and get that scheduled. So.
All right. Thank you. Council proposed business, Councilman Tucson.
Yes, I'd like to bring to everybody's attention that this Friday, March 22nd at Chapel Gym on 111 South Wallace Boulevard, Ypsilanti, Michigan, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. will be an event called March Dadness, where fathers, uncles, grandfathers, things of that nature can bring their young ones with them to form a better bond and bond over sports and all types of different things. So once again, that's March Dadness this Friday, the 22nd at Chapel Gym, 111 South Wallace Boulevard, Ypsilanti, Michigan, 4 p.m. to 6.
Thank you. Councilmember McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple of items. First, I want to just publicly thank Ellen Thackeray, who spent a good hour and a half with me on the phone earlier, I guess last week, going over the ins and outs of the Historic District Commission, the history, the agenda, and the importance of the work that they do. So kudos to her for putting up with me for quite a while. Secondly, I will be have the opportunity, thanks to Chief Moore, to speak to another group of new recruits in early April. And as I did the last time, I'll encourage all of you, if you haven't had a chance to do that, to please take advantage of it. I think it would benefit you as well as them. Please do that. And last, in response to something that was mentioned earlier during public comment, one of our speakers who joined us remotely had talked about the importance of allowing for early voting, and her point, I think, was well taken. I know that Councilmember King had made a proposal that we do that last time. It was certainly something that we had to weigh, both the cost, including the uncertainty of the costs, against the benefits, and the fact that the county could not tell us with certainty what those costs might be, because they wouldn't say in advance how many days would be required. But that was up to them. Made me uncomfortable. But I would say to the speaker that I don't think that was precedent setting at all. It would certainly be my intention to support early voting in general elections and in regular primary elections, as we've had here, I think, successfully in Ypsilanti for the recent presidential primary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Sweet.
And no business this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just an acknowledgement for Katie Jones and Andrew Halenga and Tom Cook for their support with the Huron River Watershed Council. They have noted to me that there has been a distinct difference in our interactions since these good people have been engaged in the Penn Dam core meetings on Thursdays. So.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Councilmember Simmons.
Thank you. So just a few things. One, the other, for Pi Day, I was hanging out at Corner with Ypsilanti Meals on Wheels. And you know, got to have some good conversations with folks there, thinking about some of the services and needs for seniors in our community, which continue to be like the same things around housing and accessibility, you know, issues with accessibility, modifications being added to rentals and things of that sort. But just appreciation to residents for keep telling me where to be. So thank you. Also, I also went the other week I went up to, or down, I don't know directions, to Dearborn, to meet with, the, a leader with the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. And so a few things to just share. So their Ramadan campaign, all of that will go to Gaza. One thing that they were bringing to our attention is that at the federal level, they have a budget appropriation process that currently has a prohibition for funding to UNRWA moving forward, and that they're really pushing for this to be changed, that can't pass. The United States provides a third of funding, which is about $422 million. And this is supposed to be going up to vote March 22nd. And so just to encourage our colleagues at the federal level to keep in mind that this agency has all the infrastructure to actually provide humanitarian aid in that area. They named the need for more crossing points and that at least 500 trucks a day need to be able to get through those checkpoints. And at this point, they're only seeing up to, on some days, up to 150. And that some of those trucks need to be commercial because there is money in the area, and that's something that's important for the economy to keep moving. They also said that airdropping aid only provides a third of what is possible within the size of a truck. And also that there's little control for where it actually goes. So whether it actually reaches people, which is not the same for a truck. They also talked about that shelters and spaces that are meant for maybe 2,000 people all have at least 10,000 people in them. And this idea of the funding being prohibited is a big deal. The last time they had a big cut, but it was still temporary, was when then President Trump had cut all funding for Palestinian humanitarian aid by basically just not submitting reports to Congress for it. So, just want to encourage and update folks on that. And then I also wanted to see if we could secure. So I know during our last meeting, we set this work group for the unarmed response RFP, and I wanted to secure a date with folks. And I've heard back from most folks except for council member, well, actually all of the and staff. So the date we're looking at that works for the community members is March 26th, which is the Tuesday when we don't have a council meeting. So I was hoping that might work out for people. For like the 6 o'clock time.
That works for me.
You know if there's something in here, Andrew?
There's nothing in here. I will speak. It's the chief and I are the staff members. I was off that day, but I can come in at 6.
You're
And then
taking a day, you were off, like PTO time off on that day?
I don't know. The March 26th, which is a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King?
Oh, I just have a few things I want to talk about two Easter egg hunts that are happening on the same day at the same time. But my residents sent this to me and I wanted to share. So Saturday, March the 30th from 10 to 12 at Perry Early Learning Center, 550 Perry Street, and one also in the Historic District. Again, Saturday, March the 30th from 10 to 12. I also want to just bring up, today is the last day to sign up for my future fund, and that is for any Washtenaw County student in grades 1st through 6th. I just clicked on the link and the link is still open and you have to sign up today. So I would just encourage people to sign their children up to get those funds. And also, happy birthday, Mayor Brown.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, my stuff briefly, because you know, it is my birthday. The clerk questions that we agreed upon, I will send over to our city manager so that it can be printed and put at our desk for Thursday. I did get an additional question that I think is a really good one, but I feel like I found a way to make it fit into one that we already had. So if you all would just give me the latitude to have done that, so we don't have to send it back out again. And then just wanted to share, last week, Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxon and I were able to go and speak with Mr. Ashley Fox's government class over at Y-High, for 2 different classes actually, and it was just really a great time. Being in front of students is one of my favorite things to do, especially just to be within reach and be proximate to them, and they know that they're elected officials and representatives like our textbooks, right? That they can, bless you, that we are not, you know, high up on some pedestal. We live in the community and we are accessible to them. They ask amazing questions. They care deeply about this community, and they have some expectations for us. And I hope to meet them, you know, for our young folks. And again, you know, it's still March is reading month. So also I've, you know, read in some classes, and I encourage anyone who has not to consider going into the schools and reading to our kiddos, because they love it so much. And I like it too. Councilmember King.
I just wanted to give the link. I realized I did not give the link for my future fund. So it's www.myfuturefund.org.
Thank you. I don't know what else I want to say. City manager, because I don't.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
It's okay. It's fine. It's important.
Just a couple things. The building official position has been posted. As you heard many times, we have some new officers starting on April 1st, so that will be exciting. I've been asked to, or actually a few of staff have been asked to speak to some students at EMU, so we'll be setting that up. And that's it for now.
Thank you very much. Oh, that's what I was actually gonna say. I was gonna pick you just said it too, and Councilmember McLean, that I also got to speak to the last group of new officers, and I am on the calendar to go in and do the same for this next cohort. And again, I think it's really important to just get to know folks who are coming into not only this community, but into working for the city. And it was a really great experience the last time, just getting to know folks and their why, right? That's really important to know, especially when we're trying to move to a more community focused way of, you know, public safety. I think it's important to be proximate. So I too share your sentiments about that. And I thank Chief Moore and your administrative or executive assistant for inviting us and, you know, allowing us into the space. Okay, there are 2 communications here: the Historic Commission's annual report and the Sustainability Commission's annual report that were attached to the packet. All right, this is our second opportunity for public comment. Anyone in the audience who would like to address council, to come forward. Warren, please come. Welcome back.
Hello again. Cornelius Williams, happy birthday, Mayor, by the way. I didn't catch that the first time. So I definitely agree with what was said about the language for this resolution to ban stops for secondary traffic violations being problematic. I assume that the language came straight from the resolution from YPAC. That was never meant to be adopted by council as a resolution. It was meant to ask council to author a resolution or to come up with language for a resolution. So the city manager was present for all of those meetings. He actually advised YPAC that if they passed their resolution, that city staff would come up with language, which then council would vote on. So I don't know how the YPAC resolution language made it, through to become the final resolution that you guys were discussing today, but that was never the intent from YPAC, just being at all those meetings and speaking on it every time. I do know that the point of this resolution is to deal with institutionalized racism, specifically within the institution of law enforcement. The idea that the police chief would say that Ypsilanti doesn't deal with pretext, or he doesn't know that there's any racist action taken by his officers, I think is outrageous. There shouldn't be a need to argue that racism exists in America. There's no need to argue that Ypsilanti may be immune from institutionalized racism. We know that that is 100% not the case. The fact that the Fourth Amendment would be quoted to try and make that argument when it was ratified in 1791, when we were still slaves in this country, is really outrageous. I urge you to reconsider tabling this. I had to kind of look into Robert's rules at what it meant to table something. And it says directly from Robert's rules that this is a common violation of fair procedure, and that it is confused with a motion to postpone until a certain time. So when you table something, there can be no more conversation, specifically in this case about language changes that need to happen. So I would ask council to reconsider that it was tabled today, to motion to put it back, to bring it back, and then postpone conversation about language until the next meeting. I think that would be a fair way to address this. Tabling it, according to Robert's rules, is a tactic that's used to kill a proposal. And again, I didn't know anything about this. I had to go to the Robert's Rules of Order and look it up myself while I was sitting here and you guys were discussing. But it says very clearly it's a violation of fair procedure. So I urge you guys to do that in this meeting. You still have a chance to before it's closed.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? All right, anybody on Zoom?
If anyone on Zoom would like to make comment, please raise your hand now and you have 3 minutes to address council. No hands are raised.
Thank you. So I will close audience participation. Corn, I want to respond to that. I truly do not believe that resolution was tabled for it to die. I think what I'm thinking is that as we get additional information, there will be a new resolution that will have to come anyway, because that was a recommendation. It wasn't a fully teased out resolution that came forward. And typically when a commission passes a resolution, it does come to the council table unless we direct them to work it out. So this gives an opportunity for staff to work with us to tease it out and create proper language to bring back to vote on. So I just want to put you at ease and share that I have no thought that we're not going to take this up. And this is just a process that we use. But I appreciate your feedback and the research that you did, because I get it. I get it. So thank you.
And just to add one thing, council did vote to allow tabled items to come back at the next meeting, but it has to come back at the next meeting.
Mr. Barr.
And the charter allows council to set its own rules.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further discussion, the meeting is adjourned. 9:28. Oh, it does not.